Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth and final workshop of our Mentor program. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating. Maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job that you want to make the most out of for the summer. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity over the summer so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comments section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely. Happens all the time. And have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes. This is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew on other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident, and excited when it comes to work. It doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So what I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 30, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up is you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you tell yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what? I don't deserve to be here. I'm not qualified. I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's a story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life, specifically as, you know, I don't know if any of you all are holed up right now for coronavirus and sitting inside watching television, but what he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really, really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip. And that was, when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job. You get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. This is our final workshop. I'm really excited for what you are able to accomplish over the summer. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part. Everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic of how to prepare for that first job or internship. I know a lot of y'all might be thinking, okay, I'm going into winter break. Maybe you've already landed that first internship offer. Fantastic. Or maybe you've landed that job offer. Amazing. Fantastic. Don't let this second semester be the thing that gets you off track. Leverage the second semester as an opportunity to really propel your first job, your first internship forward. If you haven't landed that job or internship, no worries. There's still plenty of opportunities to work through the entire spring semester. But for now, we're just going to focus on how can we make the most out of that first job or internship. We've got an incredible guest with us here this evening. We've got Danielle Hilmo. Danielle is the marketing manager and a shareholder for BWBR Architects. Danielle specializes in strategic planning, go, no-go analysis, production for proposals and interviews, and managing company marketing team resources.
Danielle also mentors her staff in both soft and technical skills and works to enhance BWBR's business through firm-wide initiatives. Danielle, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So I know I kind of gave a brief overview of you and just your work, but I'd love to learn, who are you? How did you get to where you're at today? How did you get to doing what you're doing today?
Well, it's really funny, a lot of students these days are so much more strategic about their career path. I never planned 1 second of my career path. Literally, I started out from small child wanting to be an actress, and went to NYU for acting my first semester, my first year of college. Came back home, didn't really know what I wanted to do. Ended up getting a degree in anthropology, and then just went to work for an architect sort of randomly. And got into—
quick question. One, was it at NYU where you got your degree in anthropology?
No, I came back home to Minnesota. Sorry, national audience. Came back home to Minnesota, got a degree in anthropology at the University of Minnesota. And I'm still in Minnesota today. I did spend some time in Japan after I graduated, degree in anthropology. So eventually I started working but doing administration for an architect, and started getting into the marketing side of it and realizing that I really had an instinct for it and a knack for it. So I guess that is the first lesson, is be open to new experiences, and you might be surprised where it takes you. I'm sure a lot of the people I went to high school with are like, wait a minute, you're a manager and you're in marketing? What is that, right? So, and I actually didn't have very many internships in college, but I do mentor high school students through architecture, construction, and engineering program. And I have a daughter who recently graduated from college. So we've talked a lot about internships, and it's been a very interesting journey for me, both for myself and through my daughter.
So how did you determine that architecture was what you want? Well, I guess maybe first question, were you open to any opportunity after you graduated college, and it just happened to be that architecture offered you the role? Or was there something about architecture that you were intrigued by?
No, I think a lot of people are attracted to architecture because it's very creative, which is true, but it's also sort of glamorous, right? When you see architects on TV or in the movies, for some reason they're glamorous, which is not real life, but they are very creative and very interesting people to be around, and really interesting products in marketing to sell. Like, I believe in what I'm selling, right? And that was really important to me, believing in what I'm doing for a living.
That's a really interesting point. I think a lot of students haven't really thought about that sort of thing, that really believing in what I'm selling, or really believing in what I'm doing. And even if you're not in sales, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're in a different part of the business operations of sorts, you might think, oh, I'm not selling anything. I mean, if you're spending your time there, you're selling your time. That's your own time, your own mental, emotional, physical energy being utilized into something that you're doing. I think a lot of times students are thinking like, okay, first I'm going to get this internship. Second, I'm going to get this job in XYZ industry. And then I'm going to get this job in this industry and be a manager and work up. It's going to be a perfect line to the top of the firm. I'm hypothesizing.
Yeah, but absolutely. I think forward, when I was younger, that was there always had to be a goal. There always had to be somewhere to go, and the place to go was up. Well, I didn't end up doing that all of the time, but it's really okay to take detours and explore new things. And like with my daughter, she still, after over a year being graduated from her bachelor's degree, she doesn't really know what she wants to do for the long term, and that's okay. I think young people today feel the pressure to just keep achieving and keep moving along some kind of path. It's fine if you need to take time to discover your path, for sure.
Well, I think that you're really onto something. I think there was a research that came out that had been researching valedictorians, and like, I think they were comparing like valedictorians to like average salaries of people. And what they were finding was that a lot of valedictorians, their salary, like 10 years into their career, was, I think, like average or below average. And the hypothesis that the researchers were hypothesizing was that because they had at such a young age been given this badge of honor that you must live up to these expectations, they were never willing to veer out or try anything risky or try anything new. And so they, a lot of times, I mean, they just felt this pressure to more or less live up to what everybody else's standards are of them. And not to say for all valedictorians, but I can't remember what study I'd been reading about it, but I thought it was fascinating, but I also thought it made a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true. I think social media has a lot to do with it. The incidences of people having mental health problems and feeling like they shouldn't be having mental health problems has definitely gone up, and especially at the top colleges and universities. So I know most of you are already in college, but for those of you who are just going into college, I would advise you to not get too tied up in trying to get into a top university at the cost of all else. And if you are fortunate enough to have been admitted to a top university, try to enjoy yourself. Don't compare yourself to everybody else. That's another thing that my daughter went through, is she had some brilliant friends at a top college, and they were super nice people, but she was always like, my friends are doing this. My friend landed an internship at a top financial company. Like, what am I doing? I'm like, you're doing fine. Just learn, right? And if you're going into an internship, even if it's not the like Microsoft or whatever, you're fine as long as you come into it with an open mind. And guess what? Even if it doesn't end up being a good experience, it's a limited time. And so you can take the experience that you didn't like and use that to form your next plans.
I think there's a quote, it was like, expectations are the opposite of happiness or something like that, where the moment we have all these expectations for ourselves and for what we think we need to be or where we need to go or how we need to be, that diminishes our ability to enjoy the time that we have that we're in. So I think that that's a lot of really good advice. I would imagine that when you took that first architectural job, when you were at a point where you're like, I'll take anything, did you have any of that kind of built up, kind of maybe not necessarily mental baggage, but just expectations of, I need to be doing this? Like, I think you even mentioned it before, like manager of marketing, you're doing what? Like, that's like, to all my previous friends, I probably thought it was crazy. Well, it insinuates that there was some form of like mental framework you had in your mind of what their expectations were of you, but you defied that because you didn't really care. But I would imagine there was still a little bit of that there.
Oh, absolutely. So I was still hanging on a little bit to, I was going to be an actress. And by the time I graduated from college, I had minored in Japanese and I had spent some time in Japan. So I wanted to become a translator, actually, or an interpreter. And I wanted to work for the UN, right? Turns out that being that literate in Japanese was really high for me. Like, I could go around town and have conversations, and I could read at about a 6th grade level because they have all these characters, and that was really hard for me too. So when I got back from Japan and was willing to take anything, actually this architectural company was doing a lot of work in Asia, and one of the reasons I took the job, which was because they were able to, or they were enticing me with, oh, well, maybe we'll grow our practice in Asia, which of course never happened. By the way, that's not the company I work for now. But so, I was in an administrative support role, and yet I was still thinking, I'm going to get back to Asia. I'm going to use my language skills. Being in Japan really changed my entire life and my whole outlook on life. But I've never actually used those language skills for a job yet. So sort of interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. And I think there's a nugget of wisdom. I think there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom in that, but the one that I'm really pulling is even if you pursue a degree in one thing and you end up pursuing a career in something separate, it doesn't mean that the skills that you learn pursuing that degree won't be necessarily leveraged in the next job. And even if they're not, it doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be leveraged sometime down the line. I think we think of ourselves as trying to formulate this narrative in our mind of like, oh, well, if I have a degree in marketing, then I must pursue a career in marketing. Then I can work up to marketing manager and chief marketing officer, whatever. But I think that if we can eradicate this narrative, needing to have a narrative, and can actually start to focus on okay, I'm learning these skills and I'm open to what the universe brings to me and can still do it. I mean, I think then in which case we have to then set our expectations of like, okay, what kind of lifestyle do I want to live? Where do I want to live? What do I want to be doing? What kind of mission do I want to be doing? Is having an important mission even important to me? I mean, I think all of these things need to be roaming in our mind as to factors that should come into play when it comes to the actual job itself. And I think sometimes it means that we might need to sacrifice the actual job duties based on what our college education was to pursue something that checks off all the other boxes, because those boxes are more important to us than the actual specific, okay, I'm doing marketing.
Yeah.
Following that example.
I think also what I've learned through experience, and it's the same in relationships and in your job, right? You don't have to pursue or wait for the perfect job, right? And especially, again, with internships, it's a limited time. So go into it, jump into it wholeheartedly, ask a ton of questions. I think, Garrett, you mentioned like, well, what should people consider? Should they consider trying to network outside their department? So for example, if you're in mechanical engineering, should you hang out with the structural and electrical engineers? Should you go talk to HR or accounting? Absolutely. You never know when you're going to meet those people again. And I know for some people it's hard to grasp outside of their friend group that they grew up with, but you truly never know when you have an opportunity to help someone, or if you have something in common with them, or if they can help you down the line. And the college that my daughter went to actually is legendary for their networking. Just saying you're an alum of that college, anyone else who's an alum throughout the world will help you. I mean, that is just amazing. And so if you could find some kind of circle like that, hang on to it. It's going to help you forever.
You know, I love that. I want to come back to that. There was one point though that you brought up of finding and waiting for the perfect job. I think to also really add to that point, building up in your mind that you finally got the perfect job also isn't healthy, because then that starts the expectation process where you're starting to think like, right, okay, I've got just the most perfect job ever. And the issue with that is it's never going to live up to whatever expectations you got for yourself. Like, I mean, there are some things that are going to come to fruition that your expectations were. Like, I've chatted with some people that were in jobs that were paying them over $100,000 right out of college, and that's amazing. And then they're like, oh my gosh, 100-hour work weeks. That's no joke. That's a real thing. I only sleep and that's it. That's all I do. And like outside of work, that's it. And the money, what I thought was super important, although there, is not as important to me as I thought it was. Now having boundaries is, and I can live off of much less salary on a life that makes me so much more happy. But that's for some people. On other things, you get other companies where you think like, oh, I'm going to be working at like the most magical place on earth. And it is really magical, but maybe it doesn't pay well or works a lot of hours. And, you know, you don't necessarily want to live there. Like you might think like Google's like the most amazing company in the world. But then if you end up realizing like I'm essentially living on the Google campus, like I want to have a little bit of balance that, you know.
Right. You want to have a life outside of that.
Yeah.
You know, and for those of you who that's clearly your goal and you thrive on that kind of pressure, great, go for it, right? But I think, Garrett, what you're starting to get at is really understand why you have these goals. So for example, going back to my own personal experience, acting, anthropology, marketing. What do all those have in common? And I didn't really understand this until about 5 years ago. It's that I really enjoy getting into other people's heads and understanding their motivations so that I can communicate with them or connect with them.
Boom. That's it. That's it,
Wow.
Danielle.
What if I realized that when I was 20, I could have like figured this out a lot faster?
Well, I will say this, that's it. That's the meat right there. Like, you don't have a degree in getting inside other people's heads and understanding why they're making certain decisions and what they're thinking. Like, there's no degree in that. So therefore we think to ourselves, well, that can't possibly be a career path, but you've made a whole career path out of it in multiple different areas, whether it be anthropology or Japanese or architecture, or marketing. I mean, all of that comes together with that same consistent theme. And I know this might be very forward thinking, but I'd love to get the students thinking about this now, at least a mental framework for what they're thinking about this now. But post in the comment section, what is something that you love to do, that you just really enjoy doing, even if it's a work, whether it be working with projects with other people on teams, or in your classroom, or in actual work projects that you've done. Like, what do you really enjoy about that? It doesn't have to be like, oh, I really enjoy leading the marketing teams, or I really enjoy doing regression analysis, or I really love laying out the engineering designs. Like, it could be that, but I want you to, what is the specific thing that you like about that? Like, break it down to even more granular level. Like, I love when people lean on me to get work in a high pressure scenario and then delivering them more than what they expected. Or I love building deep bonds and rapport with people where I can really get to know them in a level where I never knew, or I would love to get into people's heads and know what motivates them. Like, whatever it is, post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that, because I think, Danielle, where you're going with all this is probably more important than the actual major we choose or the career path we start with, is actually what drives us.
Yes, I totally agree. I would say too that in your internship, both when you're interviewing and when you are actually working there, before you start there, really research, look at their online profiles, their website, their social media platforms, their LinkedIn, whatever. Really try to figure out who the company is. Like, what are they trying to portray to the world? And then if they have a robust online presence, you can start to see what their work culture is. And so if you do get multiple offers, if you're fortunate enough, maybe that's the tipping point, right? Like, if you go on Glassdoor and all these people are like, they treat me like a number, but the pay is really good. Like, maybe you don't want to work there even for a summer or for a, January break or whatever.
Well, I'd love to ask the question about just setting expectations properly for an internship, because I think so often our expectations are, oh, we get to add this to our resume. It's like another, badge onto our list of badges and things, something to go on the cover letter, whatever. I would love to reframe that whole thought about how can we reframe our expectations when it comes to a job or an internship as a way for boosting our own knowledge base and acumen. Like, what should our expectations be going into this job or internship that are not only realistic, but more importantly, relevant and more conducive to us being better humans?
Mm-hmm. That, if you know the answer, people, or if you think you know the answer, please put it in the comments below. I think the best thing to do is, when you interview, to ask them questions and be crystal clear about what exactly are you looking for? What exactly will I be doing? And who will I be working with? Because they're trying to, especially some places, they want to get the best talent. And so they're trying to sell you on their internship as much as you're trying to sell them. And so if you have, first of all, if you know who they are, then you can ask really intelligent questions about what will it be like to work here. And then they'll know that you've done your research and you become a better candidate. And you get to know more about what you might be getting into.
True. I'm even extrapolating to like the overall, like even meta kind of expectations, like something along the lines of like, okay, when I have this internship, my expectations that I'm going to learn something about myself that I didn't know that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Or I am going to meet people that are going to give me insight into a certain industry that I didn't know much about, or regardless of whether I like those people or know much about this industry to begin with, or rather, regardless of whether I like the industry or like the people, I'm going to learn something about the people in an industry that I had not known about. Or, expectations can be, I am going to, work in an office environment or in a virtual office environment where I'm going to learn what is expected of me and other professionals in a professional setting, whether there be attire or deadlines or just professional acumen. Just like, those are the kind of expectations that I'm talking about. So as opposed to saying like, oh, my expectations that I'm going to get a job offer at the end of the semester or at the end of the summer, that's not actually healthy because it may not come true. But I think those other expectations are more not only realistic, but also beneficial for finding nuggets that can lead you to something better.
Yeah. So in short, what you're saying is create some expectations for yourself that you can have control over and that you can make true. So if you feel like you're not meeting the right people, ask if you can meet different people. And then you make your expectations about meeting a broad spectrum of people who work in a business or whatever come true.
I love that. So actually that's great fodder for a question to ask the students. What are the expectations that you have for your next job or internship? Not like I'm going to land a job by the end of the summer, but like I expect to learn about what it's like to be in this industry, or I expect to learn what it's like to have a professional acumen, or I expect to gain insight and wisdom into what it means to be in this field or to work these types of hours, like things that for fact are going to happen, like how it's going to impact you and how you can leverage those experiences to boost yourself moving forward. Not like the step that might happen to the next step type of thing, but actually things that are going to happen from that job or internship. So I love to, on this topic, I think there's a lot of students, I love to talk about the topic of failure. I think students, we build up in our mind what failure looks like, whether that being not pursuing a job within the area that we studied, or earning a salary less than what we built up in our mind compared to what our friends are earning, or moving to a city that we had not anticipated or expected or wanted to move to in the first place. I think that we build up a lot of ideas of what failure is. But on this whole point of just setting expectations and having them meet reality and just really putting yourself in the best mental position, emotional position to succeed and thrive, how would you suggest students handle failure? Or just how would you expect students to have a proper mental framework around the topic of failure?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is often people are their own worst critic. And the thing that they would consider a failure is maybe not a failure to most other people, right? And even if you were to get fired from your internship, now I got fired from my first job. It wasn't like it was a high school, like knocking door to door trying to get donations, and I wasn't very good at it. That felt like a huge failure to me, but did that really impact my life over the long run? Not really, but it did teach me that I can fail and I can try something else and be successful at something else. Because really up to that point, I hadn't ever really failed at anything. And so the concept of failing forward, we talk about that even in our company with people who have been here for a long time, and even encouraging people to take risks and fail forward, knowing that some other people on the team are going to create a safety net around you to help you, not fail the company, but try new things and maybe not get it right the first time. But as long as you learn from it, that's the forward part. If you learn something and you don't make that one mistake again, then you're failing forward and it was totally worth it.
Totally. And failure is so subjective. I mean, failure is so based on what our expectation of what we thought success was compared to reality of what we ended up with. And it so often discounts the lessons learned. And we don't realize that those lessons are learned oftentimes were way more valuable than achieving what we thought we wanted to be successful. It just takes time for that to happen. So I want to challenge students to, when you are in a position where you feel like you've been met with failure, when you've got a scenario that did not go the way you wanted it to go, to immediately start to find the nuggets. I know this sounds like gratitude, wishy-washy, mumbo jumbo, but I know, because I've not only studied this, but also I've done it myself. There's so much power in being grateful and having gratitude for the lessons that you've learned, even if things don't go the way you want them to go.
And I think we're talking about failure, and the pandemic obviously is something that was out of everyone's control. But I think one lesson that I hope people got, I think a lot of people did, and that I hope people don't forget as we quote normalize, is that you can have grace. And if you're in a situation that you don't like, you can be kind to yourself. Not that you're going to wallow in it or you're just going to give up, but you can be kind to yourself and just move on. And tomorrow's a new day. The sun's still going to rise tomorrow, right? No matter what, hopefully.
No matter what is right. But even on that topic, I don't know. I feel like there's so much we can build up in our heads around why we won't be successful, that it can hinder us. It can literally cripple us in terms of opportunities that we receive. But on the topic of identifying opportunities and having more opportunities flow towards us, more or less this law of attraction, I find that one of the most beneficial components of that is surrounding ourselves with people that, one, know what we're working towards, and two, have a strong bond, strong rapport with us. So then that opportunity can flow our way. Like, we can't just sit in our house and just expect that the best opportunities are going to fall right at our doorstep. If we put ourselves out there and we make ourselves very clear about what we're working towards, we're much more likely to achieve the things that we like to achieve. So I guess I'd love to ask you, Danielle, the power of networking. Like, is it important to build rapport with other people, other coworkers that we're working with? And if so, how do you do it? How do you build rapport, especially in this virtual environment that we're so often in? How do you initiate conversations? How do you make sure that they're not transactional, but really deep? Like, what do you do to build that?
It is a lot harder virtually, for sure. I'm established in my career. We didn't even have video conferencing when I started my career. But I would say that the most important thing, and a coach taught me this is not for me, just look for opportunities to help people. So every time you meet somebody in a professional setting, really listen to, and ask good questions about what are their interests. If they mention something, like I'm really struggling because I can't find a babysitter. Well, maybe your neighbor is like this awesome babysitter who's looking for work. I mean, that's a good coincidence. And I'm not thinking of a good example right now, but just little things. They don't even have to be related to your work. If you can help someone in any way, like say someone says, I'm really interested in volunteering in a certain area, but I don't know where to start. Maybe you just read an article or you heard a podcast or something that was about that very thing, and you can just forward them the link. It only takes a second, right? And that keeps the conversation going beyond your first meeting with them or your second meeting with them. So the more you can find out about other people and what they're interested in, then you can help them stoke their interest. And they will want to help you in turn.
100%. I know my own shameless self-plug because I'm an entrepreneur. And so I'm always supportive of anybody pursuing an entrepreneurial path. But I mean, think about how many businesses were started from two colleagues that were working together at a business to start something new or start something themselves. I mean, shoot, like Mark Benioff of Salesforce came out at Oracle. Like, he was working at Oracle and he saw an opportunity in cloud-based CRM systems. And he said, you know what, I'm gonna do this myself. And he went out and did it. Or even like Twitter, Twitter started out of like Odeo, which was an early essentially version of podcasts, and then Apple created podcasts, wiped them out, and they had a little bit of funding left, and they were like, okay, what are we going to do with this? And so their CEO, Evan Williams, said, hey, we're going to do a hackathon. And this designer, Biz Stone, and I think this coder, Jack Dorsey, got together and they said, hey, what if we could do this limited character social media platform? And they tested it and it worked, and it became Twitter as we know today. But the point is like, so many cool opportunities come out of networking with other colleagues that you work with. Not always necessarily entrepreneurial, but sometimes it's just friend-based, and it's great to have those conversations. But on the topic of building relationships with friends and colleagues, how important is it to have a strong rapport with your boss?
Oh, yeah, you don't have to be your boss's best friend. And I did have a boss for several years that I wasn't super, let's just say it, that boss really created a lot of stress in my life, mostly because this person, you never knew what mood they were going to show up in, right? Some days they were great, and some days it was like they actually made me cry at work one day. So, but what I did, because I really liked the company as a whole, and this is the same company I work for today, is I built relationships with the other leaders of the firm. And I was fortunate, and am still fortunate, to work for a company that has an open door policy, and they mean it. What I didn't realize, because I took that to heart and I walked in anyone's door anytime and told them what was on my mind. So without being a pest, obviously, just respectfully. And I never knew what it was, even though I started here in my 20s, I never knew what it was to be scared of leadership or to be intimidated, even the CEO. And come to realize several years into my time here that other people are quite intimidated. Even the act of stepping over the threshold into a private office made them nervous after years of working at the company.
Danielle, can we quickly define what you mean by without being a pest? Because I think that is not clear. That's a very subjective term. Right. And I think for most students, this ideally should be empowering, where they're like, okay, maybe I could reach out to the CEO. Maybe I could reach out to the senior level VP or whatever. And other students, not being a pest is like, oh, so I shouldn't be texting them like 3 times a day to like see how they're doing. Like, I feel like it's a very subjective bridge in terms of what not being a pest means. And for any students that are out there that are curious, like, I want to just have you define it just so then they know, like, okay, cool. Like, I know what's appropriate.
Right. So I actually heard the CEO told me this one time, that talking about expectations, we have some people in our staffers in our 20s that are asking for, a 20, they go into his office and they'd ask for a 20% pay raise. Like, that's not realistic. Plus, they didn't back it up with anything. So I guess what I would say is, not being a pest is having some kind of, I'm just curious, and it's not a mundane thing, but it's something that you really want to know about how the company ticks. I know our company, and you have to be aware of the company culture. Some cultures don't allow this. But in our company, if I say, I want to learn how X works, people will take the time to mentor. And I do that for other people today. So so if you're really curious about, well, I don't understand how people become associates in this company. That's the first step at BWBR towards leadership. What steps do you have to take? And any of the leadership in our company will definitely put down whatever they're working on, unless it's urgent, or they'll schedule another time to talk to you about it. They're happy to do so. And I think most people in leadership are happy to do those kinds of things. If you have a technical question, or even if you want to advance, say, I think I'm ready to do X, but you have to say why you think you're ready. You can't just say, I'm entitled, I think I should get to do this. You have to say why you're interested and why you think you can do it.
That's, I think, a good point. I think it's very fair. I think the key here is you've got some data that backs up your reasoning. It's not just, hey, I feel like it, I'm ready to start taking on the bulls. I want to start actually, moving towards this because, people doing similar work to me, maybe other companies are getting similar responsibilities, and or I have been hitting these certain milestones, and I believe that this is an opportunity that I can handle and be particularly successful in, that sort of thing. I think that's a really good reasoning. I also think, to your point, one of the bigger things that I'm also taking away from this that I think is really powerful for students to hear is asking for responsibilities, not necessarily higher pay. Like, at the end of the day, even if God forbid, if your company doesn't necessarily reward you with higher pay for taking on more responsibilities or even a greater title per se, that can be a level up opportunity financially at your next role.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
that's something like you should not wait for the pay to then determine you should be taking on additional responsibilities. You should seek those additional responsibilities out, because eventually that does come to those who seek it out.
And I think opportunity does come from being willing to try different things and doing things for the good of the company, especially if you believe in the company. I was employed here during the Great Recession. I had been here at my company for about 9 years when it hit. And what I noticed and what I was thankful for is I had done a lot of things that were not in my job description. So when the Great Recession happened and they had to cut people, they're like, those people over there can do multiple things. We can't let them go. These people over here, they can do one thing. It's really painful, but we're going to have to let them go. So thinking about that, when there's really bad economic environment, that can really save you. And even if you don't stay at that company, like you said, it's not necessarily the name of the company on your resume. It's what you can demonstrate, the skills that you built while you were there.
Definitely. No, I love that. That's awesome. So I'd love to just ask the students one final question. That is, what do you want to set your expectations as, and what do you want to work towards in terms of your work, that you feel like you could control to help yourself be as successful as you possibly can within your role? Like, essentially, maybe let me ask that in a less convoluted way. What would you define success in terms of your first internship or job? Post in the comment section. I would love to learn about how you would define success. Danielle, this has been a great workshop. This has been a great recording. Thank you so much for being here. One final question for you, and that is, how can our audience learn more about you? How can they connect with you? I know a lot of students are on LinkedIn. Are you okay with them connecting with you on LinkedIn? How can they learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Danielle Hilmo, just Google me. And I am the only social channel I'm on is LinkedIn. So do contact me on LinkedIn. And if you want to connect with me, just mention Ambition in Motion, or you saw the podcast, because I don't connect with total strangers. So, but I always look forward to talking with different people and helping them figure out what they want to do in life. It really is a passion of mine.
Awesome. Well, Danielle, thanks for being here. Students, thank you all for being here. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. See you next time.